A broke widow takes her twins out on Christmas Eve with only $15, hoping to give them at least one warm memory after a hard year. When Keanu Reeves walks into the restaurant and overhears their situation, he quietly pays their bill, showers the kids with gifts, and changes their lives with one unexpected act of kindness. The night this happened, I was bussing tables in a nearly empty diner, trying not to think about my own overdue rent. Then the door opened, and a young woman stepped inside with two little boys whose jackets were far too thin for the kind of cold that cuts straight through your bones. Outside, Christmas Eve looked perfect. Snow drifted past the big front windows, the streetlights turned every flake to glitter, and the radio behind the counter played those same cheerful carols on repeat. But inside, the place felt tired. The chrome stools at the counter were mostly empty, the coffee smelled burnt, and my manager kept checking his watch like he couldn't wait to lock the door and go home to his own tree, his own family, his own warm living room. The woman hesitated just inside the entrance, brushing the snow from her hair with one hand while the other held tight to both boys. They were maybe 6 or 7, twins with the same messy brown hair but different smiles. One was wide and fearless, already peering around at the decorations. The other stayed half a step behind his brother, clutching a tiny toy car in his fist like a lifeline. Their mother's coat was clean but worn shiny at the elbows, and her boots didn't match. One zipper broken, the other held together with tape. "Table for 3, I asked, forcing my voice to sound brighter than I felt. She gave me a quick, apologetic smile, the kind that says thanks for looking at me like I'm a person and not a problem. "If that's okay," she whispered, as if 3 customers might be asking too much. The boys didn't notice. They were busy staring at the plastic snowflakes taped to the windows and the cheap tinsel wrapped around the napkin dispensers like it was the North Pole. I led them to a booth near the back, the one farthest from the draft that sneaked in under the door. The kids slid into the seat with the kind of excitement you only see in children who know special nights don't happen very often. Their mother sat across from them and quietly opened her wallet under the table, but from where I stood, I still saw 3 crumpled $5 bills, a handful of coins. She counted twice, pressing her lips together as if maybe, if she looked hard enough, the money would magically multiply. When I handed her the menus, her fingers shook. She scanned the prices fast, eyes moving the way mine do over a bill I already know I can't pay. "You guys can share the chicken tenders, okay?" she said gently. "They're the good kind, and we'll get fries, lots of fries. That's a Christmas feast, right?" The bolder twin, Leo, I learned later, grinned and nodded so hard his hair flopped into his eyes. "Can we get hot chocolate too, Mom? With the mountains of marshmallows?" His brother, Liam, glanced quickly between them, hope and worry fighting in his small face, like he already knew not to ask for too much. Their mother hesitated for only a heartbeat. "We'll see," she replied, voice soft but steady. "First we make sure the important stuff fits." She looked up at me then, and there was no pride in her eyes, only a quiet, exhausted honesty. "1 kids, chicken tenders, please, extra fries if that doesn't cost more, and just water for me." I knew what that meant. I'd seen it before, parents cutting their own meals into invisible pieces so their kids could feel full for one night. My chest tightened. I could have pretended not to notice, but it's hard to unsee a woman choosing between a cup of hot chocolate and the last few dollars standing between her and empty pockets. I took the menus back and leaned closer so the manager wouldn't hear. "We've got a special," I lied softly. "Kids' meal comes with free refills on fries tonight. And I'll see what I can do about those marshmallows." For a second, she just stared at me, eyes shining in the Christmas lights reflecting off the window behind me. Then she blinked fast and nodded. "Thank you," she said, like I'd given her something huge and not just a small kindness I wasn't even sure I could get away with. As I walked their order to the kitchen, I heard the boys talking, their voices low but excited. "Do you think Dad can see us from heaven?" Leo asked. "He liked chicken tenders too." There was a pause, and when I risked a glance back, I saw their mother reach across the table and squeeze both small hands at once. "I think," she said carefully, "that if heaven is real, and I believe it is, your dad is watching you right now and saying, 'Look at my brave boys making the best of things.' He'd be really proud of you." She smiled as she spoke, but a single tear slipped down and landed on the cheap paper placemat. She wiped it away quickly, hoping they hadn't seen. In the kitchen, my manager shot me a look. "Free refills on fries?" he repeated, arching an eyebrow. "Since when?" "Since tonight," I answered before I could chicken out. "It's Christmas Eve, man. We've got, 5 tables? I'll cover the extra out of my tips if I have to." He sighed, muttered something about soft-hearted servers, but he didn't say no. So I piled the plate higher than usual, added an extra handful of fries, and when I poured 2 hot chocolates, I slipped a few extra marshmallows on top. I told myself I'd ring them up as staff meals later. I told myself I wasn't breaking the rules, just bending them a little in the right direction. I was crossing the floor to their booth, balancing the tray, when the bell over the door chimed again. A gust of colder air rushed in, carrying the sound of city traffic and faint laughter from people who had somewhere better to be. I glanced up out of habit and almost dropped the tray. The man stepping out of the swirling snow, tugging off a black knit beanie and shaking the flakes from his hair, was someone I recognized instantly, not from this neighborhood but from giant glowing movie posters all over the world. He paused at the entrance, eyes sweeping the diner, completely unaware that a tired widow with $15 to her name and 2 hungry boys was watching him from the corner booth. And that, in the next hour, all of their lives were about to collide in a way none of us could have imagined. He brushed snow from his shoulders like he'd just walked off a movie set and into our tired little diner. No entourage, no sunglasses, no, "Do you know who I am?" energy. Just a black coat, worn boots, and a quiet way of looking around that made you feel like he actually saw you. My brain needed a second to catch up. I'd seen his face 100 times on posters outside the cinema 2 blocks away, usually holding a gun or jumping off something that looked like instant death. But here, under our buzzing fluorescent lights, he just looked gentle, a little tired, like the rest of us. My manager nearly dropped the pot of coffee. "Oh, welcome," he stammered, suddenly all smiles. "Anywhere you want to sit, sir." The man just nodded and chose a stool at the counter, the one with the cracked red vinyl I kept meaning to fix with tape. "Here's good," he said. His voice was calm, softer than in the movies. "Just a coffee, please, and whatever sandwich you'd recommend if you were hungry yourself." That last line made the cook in the back grin for the first time all night. While they fussed over his order, I glanced toward the booth in the corner. The twins were halfway through their mountain of fries, eating with the pure, serious focus of kids who know they can't count on seconds. Their mom, Maria, I'd seen her name on a mail envelope once when she fumbled in her bag, kept nudging more food to their side of the plate and pretending she was full. I set 2 hot chocolates down in front of the boys, extra marshmallows leaning dangerously over the rim. "Compliments of the house," I said quietly, even though technically the house didn't know it yet. Their faces lit up like the tree behind them. Maria looked at the cups, then at me. We didn't order." "It's Christmas Eve," I cut in. "Sometimes the rules take the night off." She swallowed hard, nodded, and whispered another "thank you" that sounded a little thicker than the one before. Hours of my life have blurred together in that diner, but I can still see that exact moment like a freeze frame. The boys almost bouncing in their seats, the steam curling up between them, Maria watching them with a love so fierce it looked painful. And behind her, at the counter, one of the most famous men on the planet taking a slow sip of his coffee and pretending not to notice every stolen glance in his direction. He didn't pull out his phone. He didn't hurry anyone. When the elderly man in the next stool complained about his bad back, the stranger actually turned, listened, and laughed with him about aging knees and stubborn weather. The movie star small talk you'd expect wasn't there. It was just 2 men in winter sharing a moment. Closing time crept closer. Outside, the snow thickened, sticking to the glass in foamy clumps. Inside, my manager's good mood started to shrink back to its usual size. He printed checks, slapped them into plastic folders, and sent me out on my final lap. At Maria's table, I laid the bill down gently, almost wishing I could make the paper dissolve. She smiled at the boys, then opened the folder with the kind of nervousness most people reserve for court summons. I watched her lips move as she calculated. Subtotal, tax, total. Her shoulders stiffened. She reached for her wallet, pulled out the 3 crumpled 5s, and spread them flat with trembling fingers. Then she dug into her coat pocket, into the lining of her purse, chasing the sound of loose coins. The twins were still arguing about which snowflake on the window was theirs, oblivious. Maria stacked quarters, dimes, nickels, her face growing paler with each clink. When she finally stopped, I knew she was short before she did. "How much are we missing?" she asked, not looking up. "$2.50, I said softly. I can talk to." "I'm sorry, ma'am." My manager's voice cut in as he approached, hands on his hips. He'd been watching. "We close in 10. I need that table cleared and the bill settled." "She's just," I started. "I know," he snapped. Then, forcing a smile for Maria, "We don't do tabs and I can't comp more meals tonight. Policy." Color flooded her cheeks. She tugged off one thin ring, the plain gold band that hadn't left her finger since the first time I'd seen her, and set it carefully on the table, like a last card in a losing game. "Please," she said quietly. "I can come back and work it off. Dishes, floor, anything. They were hungry. I miscalculated. I'm really, really sorry." The twins went still. Leo's hand crept toward his mom's elbow. Liam's eyes darted between the ring and my manager's face, bewildered. My manager shifted awkwardly, not quite heartless enough to take a widow's wedding band, not generous enough to say forget it. "That isn't necessary," he muttered. "I just need." From the counter, a different voice spoke up. Calm, clear, the kind of voice that turns people's heads without even trying. "How about you put their bill on mine?" the man in the black coat said, standing and sliding a credit card onto the counter. "And I'll take care of yours too, my friend." Every conversation in the diner seemed to freeze. My manager's eyes went wide. The boys stared. Maria slowly turned in her seat as the stranger walked toward their booth, each step quiet but heavy, like the floor itself was paying attention. He stopped at the edge of their booth, not looming, not dramatic, just present. Up close, the famous face looked softer, lined in the ways cameras usually hide. Snow still clung to his hair and the shoulders of his black coat, melting into dark specks. "Hey," he said gently, eyes on Maria instead of the manager. "I hope I'm not interrupting. I'd really like to cover your meal, all of it, no strings." Maria's hands flew to the ring on the table, snatching it back like it was a burning coal. "Oh, no, you don't have to." "I know," he said, and the way he said it made the whole room go quiet. "That's the best time to help somebody, when they don't owe you anything." Up close, the twins finally recognized him. Leo's eyes went huge. "Mom," he whispered, that's the guy from the movie with the dog and the—" Liam elbowed him so hard the table rattled. "SHH, he can hear you." The stranger laughed softly, that shy, half-embarrassed laugh people never expect from someone whose face covers skyscrapers. "It's okay," he said. "My name's Keanu. What's yours?" "Leo," said the first boy, chest puffing a little. "And this is Liam. We're 7, almost 8. That last part came out fast, like age might count as some sort of credibility. Keanu turned back to Maria. "Please," he said. "Let me do this. I've had years where $15 was the whole world. I've also had years where I could spend more and not feel it. Tonight I'm lucky. Let me be." Her throat worked. You could see the battle in her, the dignity of someone who's had to be strong for too long, fighting with the exhaustion of always saying no to kindness. Finally, she exhaled. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You really don't know how much this means." "I think I do," he replied. He glanced at me at the nearly empty plates. "And I think Christmas Eve deserves dessert. Can we get 3 slices of pie here, and another hot chocolate for Mom?" My manager, still holding the half-finished check, blinked like he'd just been shaken awake. Of course," he said quickly, already hustling to the register with Keanu's card. "Anything you want, on one bill." The kids practically levitated at the word dessert. Maria put a hand over her face for a second, then dropped it, forcing a laugh. "They're going to explode if they eat more." "That's what snow is for," Keanu said. "You run it off." Then softer, "It's only one night." He slid into the end of their booth uninvited, but somehow not intrusive, like he'd just been meant to sit there all along. I watched their faces relax, the tight lines around Maria's mouth easing as he asked the boys about school, about their favorite superheroes, about the snow fort they'd build if they had a whole day and no rules. He didn't talk about his movies unless they did. When Leo brought one up, Keanu smiled and said, "Those are just stories. The real heroes are people who keep going when things get hard, like your mom, like you too." Maria's eyes filled again, but this time there was something warmer mixed with the sadness. Pride, maybe, or the fragile relief of finally feeling seen. I brought the pie and watched them fall into an easy, strange little rhythm. The twins firing questions, Keanu listening like there was nowhere else he needed to be, Maria slowly letting herself enjoy a bite of chocolate cream and a sip of hot chocolate she hadn't planned to afford. For the first time that night, the diner felt alive. The elderly man at the counter turned to listen, smiling. The cook in the back leaned on the order window. Even my manager lingered nearby, pretending to wipe an already clean table. For 10 golden minutes, it was just a good meal in a warm place on a cold night. Then from outside, the sharp screech of tires cut through the bells on the radio. A split second later, there was a heavy thud and the shattering crash of metal against metal. The entire window shook, rattling our plastic snowflakes. The twins froze, forks halfway to their mouths. Someone shouted from the street. A horn blared, stuck on a terrible, endless note. Keanu was already sliding out of the booth. "Stay here," he told the boys, voice suddenly firm. "To Maria, I'll be right back." He grabbed his coat from the back of the chair in one smooth motion and headed for the door at a run, the bells above it jangling wildly as he burst into the storm. I didn't even think. I dropped my tray and followed him into the snow. The cold hit like a slap the moment we stepped outside. Snow whipped sideways now, driven by a wind that seemed determined to erase the whole street. The horn was still blaring, the high, panicked note bouncing between the stone buildings. At the corner, an old blue sedan had skidded across the icy road and slammed nose first into a lamp post. One headlight was smashed, glass scattered across the sidewalk like diamonds. Steam hissed from under the crumpled hood. A woman in a green coat stood near the driver's side, hysterical, hands in her hair. "He just slumped over," she cried to no one and everyone. He wouldn't answer, and then the car. Keanu was already there. "Ma'am, are you hurt?" he asked, eyes scanning her quickly for blood, broken bones, anything. She shook her head, breath puffing white in the freezing air. I'm fine, but my dad, he won't wake up." The driver, a gray-haired man in his 70s, sat slumped over the wheel, his face pale, lips tinged with blue. The airbag hadn't gone off. His chest moved in tiny, shallow jerks. Keanu tried the handle. It opened with a groan. "Call an ambulance," he said over his shoulder, calm but urgent. I've got it," I yelled, my hands already fumbling for my phone. My fingers felt stupid and clumsy in the cold. 911, car crash, elderly man, not responsive. The dispatcher's voice said, "Help is on the way," but the distance between that promise and the man's limp body felt endless. Keanu leaned in, unbuckling the seatbelt with careful hands. "Sir, can you hear me?" No response. The woman sobbed behind us. "He has a bad heart, please, please." "Does he have any medicine?" Keanu asked quickly. "In his pocket," she gasped. "Nitro something." Keanu found the small bottle, checked the label, then glanced at me. "How long until they get here?" 7, maybe 8 minutes, I said, voice shaking more than I wanted. The wind tore the words from my mouth and flung them down the block. "Too long," he murmured. He moved with a strange mix of urgency and control, lowering the man's seat, checking his airway like he'd done this 100 times. Later, I'd learned he'd taken CPR and first aid courses so many times he could do them in his sleep. In that moment, he just looked like a man who refused to stand back and hope. "Sir, I'm going to help you breathe," he said, more for the daughter's sake than the unconscious man's. Then he started chest compressions, steady, measured, counting under his breath. The daughter's hands flew to her mouth. "Is he?" "He still has a chance," Keanu said without looking up. "Talk to him, he needs to hear you." And she did. She leaned in close, tears freezing on her cheeks, whispering, "Dad, it's me, it's Lily, please don't do this, please don't leave me," over and over while his chest rose and fell under Keanu's hands. Snow soaked through the knees of Keanu's black pants as he knelt in the slush. His breath came in fast clouds. He did not stop. Behind us, the diner door opened. Tiny footsteps pattered on the sidewalk. "Mom said we had to stay inside," Leo's voice called, "but we can help, we're fast." Maria's voice followed, breathless. Liam, back in the doorway now." They hovered at the entrance, torn between fear and the desperate need kids have to be useful. Maria grabbed the emergency first aid kit from beside the hostess stand and sprinted out to us, slipping once on the slick concrete before catching herself. "I used to be a nurse," she blurted, dropping to the other side of the open door. Her hands moved with long-buried muscle memory, checking the man's pulse at his neck, watching his pupils. "He's still here, keep going." Keanu gave her the smallest, relieved nod and didn't break rhythm. "What's his name?" he asked. "Frank," Lily choked out. "Okay, Frank," Maria said, bending close to his ear, voice calm despite the storm. "You're not done yet. Your daughter needs you to fix the squeaky front door and complain about the weather, remember? You stay with us." Cars crawled by, drivers gawking. The old man at our counter shuffled out with my manager's winter coat thrown over his shoulders, blocking the wind as best he could. My manager himself held an umbrella that did almost nothing, but he held it anyway, jaw tight. The whole world shrank to the circle of people around that open car door, the wheeze of the engine, the wet thump of hands pressing on a failing heart. At last, in the distance, I heard the rising wail of a siren. It grew louder, closer, until red and blue light painted the snow in frantic color. "Paramedics are here," someone shouted. They arrived in a rush of authority and gear, sliding a stretcher through the mess of ice and glass. "What do we have?" one asked, already moving into position. "Male 70s, Maria rattled off. "Possible cardiac event, brief loss of consciousness, shallow breathing, weak pulse. Chest compressions started about 6 minutes ago, no AED available." The paramedics exchanged a lightning-quick look of impressed respect. "You two did good," one said as they took over, attaching monitors, securing the oxygen mask, working with practiced speed. Keanu shifted back, muscles trembling with exertion, snow and slush dripping from the hem of his coat. For the first time, I saw the effort written all over him. He sat back on his heels, catching his breath. Then Frank coughed. It was the smallest sound, but it hit the air like a firework. The monitor showed a jagged heartbeat picking up strength. His eyelids fluttered, then cracked open, unfocused but moving. "Dad," Lily cried. "Dad, can you hear me?" He tried to speak. Only a rasp came out, but it was enough. She collapsed against the paramedic nearest her, laughing and sobbing at once. "We've got him," the medic said. "He needs the hospital, but he's fighting." They loaded Frank into the ambulance. Lily grabbed Keanu's hand with both of hers. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, voice shaking. "You already did," he answered simply. "You stayed, you talked to him, that matters." The doors slammed shut. The siren rose again, fading as the ambulance pulled away into the storm. For a moment, nobody moved. The street felt suspended between disaster and miracle. Then Leo's voice broke the spell. "That," he said loudly, pointing at Keanu, "was even cooler than the movie with the hotel and the bad guys." A ripple of tired laughter spread through the little crowd. Keanu's ears actually turned pink. He stood slowly brushing snow from his knees and looked back toward the diner. Through the fogged glass, the faint glow of the Christmas tree still shone, stubborn against the night. We trudged inside together, stamping snow from our shoes. The warmth hit us, along with the smell of coffee and frying oil and slightly burnt pie crust. My manager checked the time and rubbed his face. "City's closing the main road," he said, holding up his phone. "Police just called. Power lines down 2 blocks over, ice everywhere. They're asking businesses to shut early." "So we're stuck," the old man at the counter grumbled. "How are we supposed to get home in this mess?" Maria glanced at her twins, then at the swirling white beyond the glass. Their apartment was a solid 20-minute walk in good weather. Tonight, it might as well have been on the moon. "We'll manage," she said automatically, pulling the boys' thin jackets tighter around them. but I saw her swallow hard, doing the math of distance and cold in her head. Keanu looked from her to the storm, then to me, like he was lining up puzzle pieces only he could see. "I've got a car a few blocks over," he said slowly. "Snow tires, full tank. I was going to the airport, but that's not happening now. How far is your place?" Maria hesitated. "It's on 8th and Willow, the old brick building." "That's on my way," I blurted, then remembered I was technically still clocked in. "If we're closed, I mean." My manager waved a hand. "We're done. I'll lock up. You two helped save a life. You can go. Just don't die on the way home. Paperwork's a nightmare." Keanu gave a small, crooked smile. "Looks like it's decided," he said. Then to Maria, "If you're okay with it, I can drive you and the boys. Nobody else walking in that." He nodded toward the chaos of snow beyond the glass. Her instinctive no came halfway to her lips and stopped. She looked down at her sons' flushed faces, at their too thin coats, at the way they leaned into each other for warmth. "Okay," she said quietly, "if you're sure it's not a problem." "It's not," he said, "but you might have to listen to my terrible playlist." Leo whooped. Liam smiled for the first time in an hour. We bundled up, scarves and gloves and mismatched hats. As Keanu held the door open for them, a gust of icy wind rushed in, snuffing out a few of the candles on the tables. The diner lights flickered once, twice, and then went out. The room plunged into darkness, broken only by the glow of the emergency exit sign and the faint, colorful blur of the Christmas tree. "Well," I said into the sudden quiet, "guess that answers the question about closing time." Outside, the storm howled louder. Keanu glanced up the street, then back at the small family beside him. "Stay close," he said. "Tonight, nobody gets left behind." And with that, we stepped into the dark, the door closing softly behind us.